Dr. Lisa Martinez pressed her face against the cold metal of the viewing window. The sight before her made her stomach twist with fear and wonder. Giant towers of crystal rose from the planet's surface like massive spears thrown by gods. They climbed up and up until they disappeared into the dark sky above. "How tall are they?" asked Commander Jake Sullivan as he joined her at the window. "Nobody knows for sure," Lisa replied. "Our best guess is about 200 kilometers. Maybe more. The energy field at the top blocks our scanners." Jake whistled low. He had seen many strange things in his 20 years of space travel, but nothing like this. The towers were perfectly smooth, like glass that had been polished by wind for a million years. They glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lieutenant Amy Foster walked up behind them, carrying a thick folder of reports. "I have the files from the Galactic Council," she said. 17 different alien races have tried to climb these things. All of them failed. Lisa took the folder and flipped through the pages. Each report told the same story. Brave climbers from across the galaxy had come to this planet. They brought their best equipment and their strongest warriors. They all fell. "The Vorthok tried magnetic boots," Lisa read aloud. "Their climbers made it 32 kilometers before the equipment failed. All 6 team members died in the fall." Jake shook his head. "The Vorthok were known for their incredible strength. If they could not climb these towers, who could?" "What about the crystally?" Amy asked. "They can stick to any surface." Lisa turned the page. 41 kilometers. The silicon-based beings tried to use their natural ability to bond with crystal surfaces. The anti-gravity field at that height was too strong. It ripped them right off the tower. The 3 humans stood in silence for a moment. Through the window, they could see the base of the nearest tower. It was wider than a city block and perfectly round. The surface looked like it had been carved from a single piece of blue-white crystal. "Tell me about this anti-gravity field," Jake said. Lisa pulled out her tablet and showed him the data. "It starts weak at ground level, but gets stronger as you climb higher. The field pushes against anything that tries to go up the tower. The higher you go, the harder it pushes back." "That explains why everyone falls," Amy said. "The field literally throws them off. It gets worse," Lisa continued. "At about 50 kilometers, the force becomes strong enough to crush normal climbing equipment. Most species can't even survive the pressure at that height." Jake studied the data on the tablet. Red lines showed where each alien expedition had failed. The highest point reached was 47 kilometers, achieved by the Hegemony's best mountain specialists just 6 months ago. "The Hegemony team had gravity-defying harnesses," Lisa explained. "Top-of-the-line equipment that could counteract gravitational forces up to 50 times normal weight. The harnesses exploded under the pressure." Amy opened another file. "The death toll is over 300 beings from different worlds. The Galactic Council has officially declared the towers unclimbable. They want to make this planet off-limits to prevent more deaths." Lisa walked away from the window and sat down at the research table. She spread out photos and diagrams of the failed expeditions. Each image showed the same thing: broken equipment scattered at the base of the towers, and sometimes the remains of the climbers who had tried. "Every single species approached this the same way," she said, pointing at the images. "They all tried to climb up against the anti-gravity field. They fought it with brute force or fancy equipment." Jake pulled up a chair next to her. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we're looking at this wrong," Lisa said. "What if the solution isn't to fight the field? What if we need to work with it instead?" Amy joined them at the table. "Work with it how?" Lisa picked up a photo of the Ethron expedition. The gas giant dwellers had natural levitation abilities, but even they had failed at 38 kilometers. "Look at this," she said. "The Ethrons tried to float up the side of the tower. When the anti-gravity field hit them, It pushed them away from the surface. They couldn't maintain contact with the crystal. Same problem everyone has, Jake observed. Exactly, but what if that's not actually the problem? Lisa stood up and walked to the whiteboard on the wall. She drew a simple diagram of a tower with arrows pointing away from it. Every species thinks of up and down the same way we do, she continued. Up is away from the planet, down is toward the planet. But what if we could change that? Amy looked confused. Change what? Change which way is up for the person climbing, Lisa said. She drew a stick figure on the tower, then drew arrows around it pointing in different directions. What if we could make the climber think the tower surface was actually the ground? Jake stared at the diagram. You mean flip their gravity somehow? Exactly. If we could create a small gravitational field around the climber, we could make them think they were walking on flat ground instead of climbing a vertical surface. Amy shook her head. That's impossible. We don't have the technology to manipulate gravity like that, don't we? Lisa asked. She pulled out another tablet and showed them recent research from Earth. The gravity drive on our ship works by creating localized gravitational fields. It's not that different from what I'm suggesting. Jake leaned forward, interested now. You want to miniaturize a gravity drive and put it on a person. Not just miniaturize it. Redesign it completely. Instead of moving a ship through space, we use it to change which direction feels like down to the person wearing it. Lisa drew more diagrams on the whiteboard. She showed how a small gravitational field generator could be built into special boots. The boots would create a bubble of altered gravity around the wearer. To everyone else, the person would be climbing up a vertical tower, she explained. But to the person wearing the boots, they would feel like they were walking on level ground. The anti-gravity field from the tower would actually help keep them pressed against the surface. Amy looked skeptical. This sounds like science fiction. So did faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, Jake replied. The question is whether we can actually build something like this. Lisa nodded eagerly. I've been running calculations. For weeks, the theory is solid. We would need to solve some serious engineering problems, but it's possible. Jake stood up and walked back to the window. The crystal towers still rose into the sky like frozen lightning. For millions of years, they had stood as monuments to impossibility. 17 different alien civilizations had declared them unclimbable. The Galactic Council thinks we're crazy for even trying, Amy said. Humans are still considered a young species. We've only been in space for 3 centuries. Maybe that's our advantage, Jake replied. We don't have millions of years of thinking that tells us something is impossible. Lisa gathered up her papers and tablets. I need to get back to Earth. If we're going to do this, I'll need the best engineers and physicists on the planet. How long will it take? Jake asked. 6 months, maybe 8. We'll need to design the gravity boots from scratch, test them thoroughly, and train a climbing team. Amy looked out at the towers again. And if it doesn't work? Lisa followed her gaze to the crystal spears piercing the sky. At their base, she could see the scattered remains of equipment from previous expeditions. Metal twisted by forces beyond imagination. The bones of heroes who had tried and failed. Then we joined the other 300 who died trying, she said. Quietly, but at least we'll have tried something different. Jake clapped her on the shoulder. Then let's go make some impossible boots. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Humans were going to attempt something that 17 alien species had failed to do. They were going to climb the impossible sky pillars of Kepler-442b in the Colorado mountains. Dr. Ben Crawford stood in front of a massive whiteboard covered with equations. The theoretical physicist had not slept properly in 3 days. Coffee cups and energy drink cans littered his desk. His hair stuck up in wild directions. The math works, he said to his assembled team. I've checked it 50 times. We can create Localized gravitational fields strong enough to flip a person's orientation. Engineer Kate Williams looked up from her computer screen. She had been running simulations all morning. The power requirements are huge, Ben. We're talking about bending space-time around a human body. That's why we build it into boots, Ben replied. He walked to another whiteboard and drew a diagram of a boot with various components labeled. We put the gravitational field generator in the sole. Add power cells in the heel and ankle supports. The whole system stays close to the ground where it's most stable. Alex Turner, the robotics expert, shook his head. You're asking us to build something that has never existed before. We don't even know if the human body can handle constant gravitational flipping. That's what testing is for, Ben said. He pulled up a video on the wall screen showing footage from the failed alien expeditions. Look at this. The hegemony climbers made it 47 kilometers before their harnesses exploded. The anti-gravity field was pushing against them with a force of 60 times normal gravity. Kate paused her simulation and joined Ben at the screen. So the field gets stronger as you climb higher. Exactly. But here's the key difference. Ben drew arrows on the whiteboard. Every other species tried to climb up against the field. They fought it directly. Our boots will make the wearer think the tower surface is down. The anti-gravity field will actually help push them against the crystal. Alex looked confused. I don't understand how that helps. Ben picked up a pen and held it vertically. Imagine. This pen is the tower. Normal gravity pulls things toward the planet, he pointed down. The tower's anti-gravity field pushes things away from the tower surface. He pointed sideways. Now imagine our climber is wearing gravity boots. Ben rotated the pen so it was horizontal. To the person in the boots, the tower surface becomes the ground. The anti-gravity field that was pushing them away now helps keep them pressed down against what they think is the floor. Kate's eyes widened. You're turning the problem inside out. Exactly. Instead of fighting physics, we're rewriting the rules for one person at a time. The team worked 18 hours a day for the next 2 months. They built prototype after prototype. The first attempts were disasters. The gravitational field generators overheated and exploded. The power cells died after 10 minutes. The boots weighed so much that no one could walk in them. Kate solved the weight problem by using new lightweight materials developed for spacecraft. The boots ended up weighing only 15 pounds each, despite containing technology that could bend space-time. Alex designed the control systems. Tiny computers monitored the wearer's position and automatically adjusted the gravitational field strength. Gyroscopes kept the person balanced even when their personal gravity was pointing in a completely different direction from everyone else. Ben worked on the theoretical problems. How strong should the field be? How quickly could they change the orientation without making the wearer sick? What happened if the system failed while someone was hanging upside down on a crystal tower? The first human test was conducted in a laboratory with heavy safety equipment. Dr. Sarah Kim, a volunteer from the university, strapped on the prototype boots. The team watched nervously as Ben powered up the system. Field generator online, Kate announced. Reading stable gravitational distortion in a 2-meter radius around the test subject. Sarah took a tentative step forward. To everyone watching, she appeared to be walking normally. But according to the instruments, her personal gravity was now pointing sideways. This is incredible, Sarah said through her radio headset. I feel completely normal, like I'm walking on flat ground. Ben increased the field strength gradually. On the monitoring screens, they could see Sarah's gravitational orientation rotating. First sideways, then at an angle, then completely upside down. How do you feel? Alex asked. Fine, Sarah replied. A little dizzy at first, but the feeling passed. It's like the whole room rotated around me, but I stayed in the same place. The test lasted 30 minutes. When they powered down the boots, Sarah stumbled slightly as her gravity returned to normal, but she was grinning widely. "That was amazing," she said. "When can we test them on a real wall?" The next phase of testing took place at a rock climbing facility. They built a 30-foot artificial climbing wall made of smooth composite material. Ben installed devices that could generate a weak anti-gravity field, simulating the conditions on the sky pillars. Sarah strapped on the improved boots and approached the base of the wall. To everyone watching, she was about to attempt an impossible: climb up a completely smooth vertical surface. She activated the boots and stepped onto the wall. To Sarah, the wall had suddenly become the floor. She walked up it as easily as crossing a room. The anti-gravity field that should have pushed her away instead helped keep her feet planted firmly on the surface. "This is unreal," she radioed down to the team. "I'm walking up a vertical wall, but it feels like level ground." Kate monitored the power consumption carefully. "We're getting about 4 hours of operation per charge cycle. That should be enough for a climbing expedition." Alex tracked the system performance. All computers functioning normally, gyroscopes maintaining perfect balance. The wearer doesn't even need special training. Ben watched Sarah walk around on the vertical wall like it was a dance floor. She was moving confidently, even running and jumping. The gravity boots made the impossible look easy. News of the successful tests reached the Galactic Council within days. Representatives from across the galaxy demanded to see the human technology. Most refused to believe it was real. The Zephyrian ambassador released a public statement: "If 17 advanced civilizations cannot conquer these monuments, what hope do these newcomers have? Human technology is primitive compared to the resources that have already failed." The Vorthak delegation was more direct. "Humans are known for their wild claims. We will believe it when we see them standing on top of the sky pillars." But other voices were more supportive. The research-focused Academy Coalition offered to fund additional testing. Even some members of the hegemony expressed interest in the human approach. Dr. Lisa Martinez returned to Earth to review the progress, watched Sarah demonstrate the gravity boots on the test wall, and smiled for the first time in months. "It actually works," she said to Ben. "You did it. You found a way to make the impossible possible." Ben nodded, but his expression was serious. "The easy part is done. Now we have to make boots that can handle the real conditions on Kepler 442b. The anti-gravity field there is hundreds of times stronger than what we can simulate here." Kate was already working on the next generation of boots. "We'll need bigger power cells, stronger field generators, and more robust computers. Everything has to be designed to handle forces we've never dealt with before." The team had 6 months to build equipment that could survive conditions no human had ever experienced. They had to create boots that could rewrite the laws of physics while protecting the person wearing them. But for the first time since the project began, they believed it was actually possible. 6 months later, the human expedition ship Aurora's Edge returned to Kepler 442b. This time, they brought something no other species had ever attempted: 3 pairs of gravity boots and a team crazy enough to use them. Captain Ryan Peterson stood in the equipment bay, checking his gear for the 10th time. The former Marine had climbed mountains on 6 different worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this challenge. The gravity boots hummed softly around his feet, their blue lights pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Power cells at full charge," reported Dr. Lavra Hayes, the mission physicist. "Field generators responding to all test commands. Computer systems running diagnostics every 30 seconds. Tony Martinez, the youngest member of the climbing team, adjusted his safety harness nervously. The engineer had volunteered for the mission despite having no climbing experience. His job was to monitor the boot's technical performance during the ascent. Through the ship's viewing ports, they could see dozens of alien vessels surrounding the planet. Word of the human attempt had spread throughout the galaxy. Representatives from every major civilization had come to witness what most expected to be another spectacular failure. Commander Jake Sullivan addressed the climbing team over the intercom. "Gentlemen, lady, you're about to attempt something that has killed over 300 beings from 17 different species. The entire galaxy is watching. No pressure." Ryan smiled grimly. "We've tested these boots in every condition we could simulate on Earth. Either they work, or we become part of the statistics." The transport shuttle carried them down to the planet's surface. As they approached the largest sky pillar, Ryan could see the debris field at its base. Twisted metal from failed expeditions covered the ground. Like a mechanical graveyard, Dr. Hayes activated her recording equipment. Beginning final equipment check at the base of Sky Pillar Alpha. The structure rises approximately 200 kilometers above us. Surface appears to be single-piece crystal formation, perfectly smooth. Tony ran his hands along the pillar's base. The crystal felt warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with internal energy. "I'm reading massive gravitational distortion starting about 10 meters up. The anti-gravity field is already active." Ryan stepped into the gravity boots and powered them up. The sensation was like stepping into a different world. The massive crystal pillar that had been looming above them suddenly became the ground beneath his feet. The planet's surface now hung overhead like a distant ceiling. "Field activation successful," he reported. "Gravitational orientation flipped. The pillar surface feels solid and stable under my feet." Dr. Hayes followed, then Tony. Within moments, all three humans were standing on what appeared to be vertical crystal wall, but felt like level ground to them. "This is incredible," Tony said, looking around in wonder. "To us, we're standing on flat ground. But to anyone watching from normal gravity, we're standing on a vertical wall." They began their ascent. To the observers in the ships above, the humans appeared to be walking up an impossible vertical surface. But to the climbing team, they were simply walking across an endless crystal plane dot at 5 kilometers height. They passed the first marker left by a failed expedition. The remains of crystal climbing equipment lay scattered on the pillar's surface, the silicon-based material cracked and broken. "The crystri made it this far before their molecular adhesion failed," Dr. Hayes noted. "Anti-gravity field strength here is about 15 times normal planetary gravity." Ryan felt the boots working harder to maintain their gravitational field. The humming sound grew louder, and he could feel warmth spreading through the solace of his feet as the power system strained. "Power consumption increasing as expected," Tony reported. "We're still well within acceptable parameters." At 10 kilometers, they encountered their first real test. The anti-gravity field had grown strong enough to affect their equipment. Dr. Hayes' recording devices began malfunctioning, and Tony's diagnostic tools showed error readings. "The field is interfering with our electronics," Tony said, tapping his tablet screen. "But the gravity boots are still functioning perfectly." At 15 kilometers, they passed the highest point reached by the gas giant dwelling Ethrons. The remains of their floating platform hung in the air, suspended by the same anti-gravity forces that had defeated them. "Look at that," Dr. Hayes said, pointing at the floating debris. "The anti-gravity field is strong enough here to completely counteract the planet's gravity. No wonder the Ethrons couldn't maintain contact with the pillar surface." Ryan checked his suit's readings. "Good thing our boots create their own gravitational reference frame. To us, that debris is just floating in the air above our heads." The climb continued. 20 kilometers, 25, 30. Each milestone marked another failure of alien technology, another species that had declared the task impossible. At 35 kilometers, they reached the wreckage of a hegemony expedition. The gravity-defying harnesses had been torn apart by forces beyond their design limits. Pieces of the advanced technology were embedded in the crystal surface like shrapnel. The hegemony had the best anti-gravity technology in the galaxy, Dr. Hayes observed. Their harnesses could counteract gravitational forces up to 50 times normal weight. But look at this damage. Tony examined the twisted remains of the harnesses. The metal has been stretched and compressed simultaneously. The anti-gravity field must have created conflicting forces that ripped the equipment apart. That's exactly what would have happened to us if we'd tried the same approach, Ryan said. Fighting the field directly instead of working with it. At 40 kilometers, the team took their first extended rest. They sat down on what felt like solid ground but was actually the vertical face of an impossible crystal tower. Around them, the thin atmosphere made breathing difficult even with their oxygen systems. How are the boots holding up? Ryan asked. Tony checked his diagnostic equipment. Power consumption is high but stable. Field generators are running hot, but within acceptable ranges. We should have enough power to reach the top and get back down. Dr. Hayes looked up at the pillar stretching endlessly above them. We're higher than any previous expedition. The hegemony's record was 47 kilometers. We've already made history. History is nice, Ryan replied, but we came here to reach the top. At 45 kilometers, they encountered something unexpected. The crystal surface began to show patterns. Faint lines and symbols were etched into the previously smooth material. These markings, Dr. Hayes said, running her gloved hand over. The symbols, they're not random. This looks like writing, but not from any known galactic civilization. The symbols seemed to respond to their touch, glowing with a soft blue light that matched the pillar's internal energy. The markings are getting brighter as we climb higher, Tony observed. It's like the pillar is reacting to our presence somehow. At 50 kilometers, they broke the all-time altitude record. The anti-gravity field was now strong enough to crush normal matter, but the gravity boots continued to function perfectly. To the climbing team, they were still just walking on solid ground. We did it, Dr. Hayes said quietly. We're higher than anyone has ever climbed, but Ryan kept walking. We're not done yet. The real test is still ahead. Above them, the crystal pillar continued its impossible climb toward the stars. The energy field that marked the top was still over 100 kilometers away. The hardest part of their journey was just beginning. In the ships orbiting above Alien. Observers watched in stunned silence as 3 humans achieved what their civilizations had declared impossible. The young species from Earth had found a way to turn the laws of physics on their head. The climb continued into the thin atmosphere, toward whatever secrets waited at the top of the sky pillars. At 75 kilometers above the planet's surface, the human climbing team faced their greatest challenge yet. The anti-gravity field had grown so powerful that it began affecting their bodies in ways they had not expected. Tony Martinez sat down heavily on the crystal surface, his face pale behind his helmet visor. Sweat dripped down his forehead despite the cold, thin air around them. The constant gravitational manipulation was making him sick. I can't tell which way is up anymore, he said through the radio, his voice shaky. My inner ear feels like it's spinning in circles. Dr. Laura Hayes checked her medical scanner. His balance system is completely confused. The human brain isn't designed to handle constant changes in gravitational direction. Captain Ryan Peterson knelt beside Tony, keeping one hand on his teammate's shoulder. How bad is it? Bad, Tony replied. Everything looks normal to me because of the boots, but my body knows something is wrong. I feel like I'm going to throw up. The gravity boots were working perfectly from a technical standpoint. They created a stable gravitational field that made walking on the vertical crystal surface feel like walking on flat ground. But the human nervous system was not equipped to handle such extreme conditions. We need to take a break, Dr. Hayes sighed. Tony's body needs time to adjust. Ryan looked up at the crystal pillar stretching endlessly above them. They had climbed farther than anyone in galactic history, but they were still only halfway to their goal. The energy field at the top seemed as distant as ever. "How long?" he asked. "At least an hour," Dr. Hayes replied. "Maybe longer. We're pushing the limits of human biology here." They found a slight depression in the crystal surface that provided some shelter from the wind. Tony lay down and closed his eyes, trying to fight off the waves of nausea that crashed over him. "Tell me about the technical readings," Ryan said. To take their minds off the situation, Tony opened his eyes and checked his diagnostic tablet with shaking hands. "Power consumption is through the roof. The gravity boots are working 3 times harder than they did at ground level. But they're holding steady." "What about the anti-gravity field strength?" 97 times normal planetary gravity, Tony read from his instruments. "If we weren't wearing these boots, the field would rip us apart at the molecular level." Dr. Hayes recorded their position and condition. "We're encountering forces that no previous expedition ever reached." The hegemony team's equipment exploded at 47 kilometers when they hit 60 times normal gravity. "We're almost twice that level." Ryan checked his own suit systems. He felt the strain too, though not as badly as Tony. Years of military training and mountain climbing had prepared his body for extreme conditions. But even he could feel the strange effects of walking in gravity that pointed in impossible directions. "The markings on the crystal are getting brighter," Dr. Hayes observed. The symbols etched into the pillar's surface now glowed with an intense blue light that pulsed in complex patterns. "It's like the pillar knows we're here," Tony said weakly. "The higher we climb, the more active it becomes." After an hour of rest, Tony felt well enough to continue. But their pace was much slower now. They had to stop every few hundred meters to let their bodies recover from the gravitational stress. At 80 kilometers, they made a disturbing discovery. Dr. Hayes' medical scanner began showing cellular damage in all 3 team members. "The constant gravitational manipulation is affecting us at the DNA level," she reported. "Our cells are being stretched and compressed in ways they were never designed to handle." "How much damage?" Ryan asked. "Not life-threatening yet, but it's getting worse the higher we climb. We need to move faster or turn back." Ryan looked at his teammates. Tony was struggling to walk in a straight line. Dr. Hayes was showing early signs of the same balance problems. Even his own vision was starting to blur at the edges. "We keep going," he decided. "We've come too far to quit now." At 90 kilometers, the anti-gravity field reached 120 times normal gravity. The gravity boots were running at maximum power just to maintain their protective bubble. Warning lights flashed on Tony's diagnostic equipment. "We're approaching the limits of the boot design," he said through gritted teeth. "The field generators are overheating." "How much longer can they last?" Dr. Hayes asked. "Maybe 10 more kilometers. After that, we're gambling with our lives." The crystal surface around them had changed completely. Instead of smooth, featureless material, complex patterns covered every square meter. The symbols looked like writing, but also like circuit diagrams or star maps. They pulsed with energy that seemed to respond to the human's presence. "This isn't just decoration," Dr. Hayes said, studying the patterns. "These markings serve some kind of function. They're part of a larger system." At 100 kilometers, they encountered something that stopped them cold. The crystal pillar split into multiple sections, creating a complex geometric structure that twisted upward in impossible spirals. "What is this?" Tony asked, staring at the architectural marvel above them. "It's not natural," Dr. Hayes said. "Someone built this. The entire pillar is artificial." The realization hit them like a physical blow. The sky pillars were not natural formations. They were constructed by an intelligence with technology far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. But who could build something like this? Ryan wondered aloud, as if in answer to his question. The symbols around them flared with brilliant light. For a moment, The three humans could see the true scope of what they were climbing. The pillar was not just a tower, it was a machine. The crystal structure was filled with energy conduits and processing systems that operated on principles unknown to galactic science. "We're not climbing a monument," Dr. Hayes whispered. "We're climbing a computer." At 110 kilometers, the gravity boots finally began to fail. Warning alarms sounded in Tony's helmet as the field generators struggled to maintain their protective bubble. "Field strength dropping," he reported. "We've got maybe 15 minutes before total system failure." Ryan looked up at the energy barrier that marked the top of the pillar. It was still 40 kilometers away, an impossible distance to cover in 15 minutes. "We're not going to make it," Dr. Hayes said quietly. But as she spoke, something extraordinary happened. The crystal surface beneath their feet began to move. Sections of the pillar started rearranging themselves, creating a faster path upward. The alien machine was helping them climb. "It's responding to us," Tony said in amazement. "The pillar is changing its structure to help us reach the top." New pathways opened in the crystal, leading upward at gentle angles instead of the previous vertical climb. The anti-gravity field seemed to weaken in these new passages, giving the failing gravity boots a chance to recover. "Why is it helping us?" Dr. Hayes asked. "Maybe because we're the first ones to make it this far," Ryan suggested. "Or maybe because we found a different way to solve the climbing problem." The rearranging crystal carried them upward faster than they could have climbed on their own. The alien machine seemed eager to bring them to their destination, dotted 130 kilometers. They could see the energy barrier clearly. It shimmered like a soap bubble, but filled with swirling patterns of light and color. Beyond it lay the answer to the greatest mystery in the galaxy. "Whatever's up there," Ryan said, "it's been waiting for someone who could think differently about this problem." The three humans continued their impossible climb, carried upward by technology that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics and engineering. They were about to discover that the sky pillars held secrets that would change the course of galactic civilization forever. At 150 kilometers above the planet's surface, Captain Ryan Peterson, Dr. Lavra Hayes, and Tony Martinez stood before the energy barrier that had blocked every scanner in the galaxy. The shimmering wall of light stretched across, their path like a door made of captured starlight. Ryan reached out with his gloved hand toward the barrier. Instead of hitting a solid wall, his hand passed through easily. The energy field parted around him like water, recognizing something in his gravitational signature that no previous climber had possessed. "It's opening for us," Dr. Hayes said. In wonder, "The barrier is responding to the gravity boots." Tony checked his failing diagnostic equipment one last time. "Field generators are almost dead, but they're still creating enough gravitational distortion to act as a key." The three humans stepped through the energy barrier and found themselves in a vast chamber carved from the same crystal as the pillar. But this was no empty space. The walls were covered with control panels, displays, and interfaces designed for multiple different types of alien physiology. "This is incredible," Dr. Hayes whispered, her voice echoing in the huge room. "It's a control center, but control for what?" Tony stumbled toward the nearest control panel, his gravity boots finally giving out completely. Without their protection, he collapsed to the floor as normal gravity returned. But instead of falling toward the planet far below, he fell toward the chamber floor. "The room has its own gravity field," he said, getting back to his feet. "We can move around normally in here." Ryan and Dr. Hayes powered down their gravity boots as well. The relief of returning to normal gravitational orientation was immediate. Their heads stopped spinning, and their stomachs settled for the first time in hours. At the center of the chamber sat a device unlike anything they had ever seen. It was roughly spherical, about the size of a small car, and covered with the same glowing symbols they had seen on the pillar walls. But these symbols were moving, shifting and changing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "What is it?" Ryan asked. Dr. Hayes approached the device carefully, her scientific instruments going crazy with readings. "It's generating massive gravitational waves. The power output is beyond anything we can measure." Tony's engineering background helped him interpret some of the alien interfaces. "These control panels aren't random," he said. "They're all connected to this central device. And look at this." He pointed to a series of displays showing star maps. But these weren't maps of local space. They showed the entire galaxy, with thousands of points of light connected by flowing lines. Those points match the locations of other sky pillar planets, Dr. Hayes realized. There are hundreds of them scattered across the galaxy. As they studied the displays, the central device began to respond to their presence. The moving symbols grew brighter, and new interfaces appeared on the surrounding control panels. The alien technology was coming to life after eons of dormancy. "It's been waiting," Ryan said quietly. "This whole system has been waiting for someone who could solve the climbing puzzle." Tony found a control panel that seemed designed for beings with hands similar to humans. When he touched it, the entire chamber filled with holographic displays, showing the history of the galaxy. Images flashed past showing countless civilizations rising and falling over millions of years. "The builders of this place," Dr. Hayes said, watching the historical display, "they're not shown as physical beings, just as patterns of energy and thought." The holographic history continued, showing how the ancient builders had transcended physical existence by mastering gravitational forces. They had built the Sky Pillar network as a test, waiting for a species that could think beyond conventional limitations. "They left all this technology behind," Tony said in amazement. "The entire network is still functional. It's just been waiting for someone smart enough to activate it." Ryan studied the galaxy map more carefully. Those flowing lines between the pillar planets. They're not just connections, they're paths. As if responding to his understanding, the central device began to hum with power. The gravitational waves it generated created a stable distortion in spacetime that connected this chamber to similar chambers on hundreds of other worlds. "It's a transportation network," Dr. Hayes breathed. "The sky pillars are anchor points for instantaneous travel across the galaxy." The technology was beyond anything current galactic civilization could create. Stable wormholes that could transport ships or people between distant star systems in seconds rather than years. The ancient builders had solved faster-than-light travel by manipulating gravity itself. Tony found controls that let him access the network. Displays showed the status of pillar installations across the galaxy. Most had been inactive for millions of years, waiting for the test to be completed. "We can activate the entire network," he said. "Every sky pillar planet becomes connected to every other one. Travel time between any 2 points in the galaxy drops to minutes." But there was more. The holographic displays showed that the network wasn't just for transportation. The sky pillars could manipulate gravitational forces on a planetary scale. They could move worlds, create or eliminate asteroid belts, even stabilize dying stars. "The builders left us the tools to reshape the galaxy," Dr. Hayes said. "But only after proving we could solve problems differently than everyone else." Ryan walked to the chamber's viewing port and looked out at the stars. In orbit around the planet, he could see the ships from dozens of alien civilizations, all waiting to learn what the humans had discovered. "This changes everything," he said. "Galactic travel, planetary engineering, maybe even the ability to save worlds from natural disasters." Tony began the activation sequence. Across the galaxy, dormant sky pillars began to wake up for the first time in millions of years. The ancient network came online, connecting civilizations that had never known such technology existed. "The other species will want to know how we did it," Dr. Hayes said. How 3 humans with experimental boots succeeded where 17 advanced civilizations failed. We tell them the truth, Ryan replied. Sometimes the solution isn't about being stronger or more advanced. Sometimes it's about being willing to turn your understanding upside down. The chamber's communication systems activated, sending a signal to every ship in orbit. The message was simple but revolutionary. The sky pillars were no longer monuments to impossibility. They were humanity's gift to the galaxy. In the control chamber high above Kepler 442b, 3 humans stood surrounded by technology that would transform galactic civilization. They had climbed the impossible towers not through superior strength or advanced equipment, but by refusing to accept that the problem was unsolvable. The gravity boots lay powered down on the crystal floor, their job finally complete. They had been the key that unlocked a million-year-old puzzle, proving that human creativity could overcome any obstacle. As news of their success spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to understand something important about the young race from Earth. Humans didn't just solve problems. They redefined what problems were possible to solve. The sky pillars still rose from planets across the galaxy, but they were no longer barriers. They had become bridges connecting every world to every other world, making the impossible journey between stars as simple as stepping through a door. And it had all started with 3 humans who refused to accept that something couldn't be climbed.